Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the Fantasy Master Lothario for the last time of the season. Gray Albright, how's it going over there, Gray?
Hey, what's going on there, B-Don?
Oh, not too much. We are coming to you on the Saturday before the last day of baseball season. So it is time to finally talk about next year, Gray. And in order to do that, we're just going to do what has become, I think, podcast tradition. I don't know if you did this before me, but I know that we've done it every year. This is the magic third season, I think, for me. So as far as I know, I'm not going anywhere. So, tradition be it. We're going to do the top 25 players, 1 through 25. We'll go back and forth drafting for 2025. This is obviously for Roto. I guess if we're really narrowing it down, it's Roto. It's probably shallower formats, 10, 12 team leagues. Not that changes a whole lot unless you are very risk averse or you like to take a lot of risk. But other than that, for the top 25, not a whole lot should change. Roto, as long as it stays in the Roto format.
I just want to say that I hope you're back next year, assuming my AI B-Don doesn't come in the mail anytime soon. Because if I do get a chat B-Don, I will have to try it out. You understand? I am on the cutting edge of the fantasy sports world, and you may potentially get replaced by someone who looks exactly like you but talks in a robotic voice. So
it's fair. It took me like 2 years to finally be able to comment back on some of the things that you say to me. So I'd be interested to know what the learning curve is for a chatbot on some of the things that come out of your mouth and how they're supposed to really figure that out, or some of your pronunciations. That would be really fun for the bots as well. There's a lot of things that would be really entertaining.
I am sorry, Fantasy Master Lothario, but there is no Louis Castillo in the major leagues.
Could you please try his name again or reference another player?
Or could you spell it out? Oh, man. Okay.
I did in the notes that I sent you 3 weeks ago.
All right. Okay. Meta beat on. Let's do
it. A little too close to home on that one.
Yeah. Ouch.
All right, great. Let's just jump into it then. Number one pick. I'll give it to you. You are the fantasy master Lothario. Who is your number one draft pick?
Okay, so you gave us a brief rundown of how this is going to go, but for the top 25, this is if it's not clear, it's going to be you and I going back and forth doing a top 25, and that has no real bearing in reality for like an actual team, because like it's not like we're building a team. Like it's not like you're trying to get a first baseman and I'm trying to get a second baseman. This is literally just what we think is going to be in the top 25 for 25. And there's also it's worth saying that we're doing this in the tail end of the season in September. So, if there's any trades in the offseason, or if Ohtani tears his ACL, or God forbid bets on tearing his ACL and gets caught for betting on that, then, things could potentially change. So, just want to put it out there that this is a WIP work in progress. Okay. With all that said, I mentioned him. I got to go with Ohtani. I don't know. Honestly, I think at this point, like, if you're not taking, like, there'll be people, I'm sure, that don't take Ohtani in the with their top pick in 25. But I think if you're doing that, you're probably you're just like you're being contrarian, really. And that could work. Like, I would have said the same. I probably said the same thing last year. Like, if you weren't taking Acuna number one overall, then you were just being contrarian. And we see what happened there. But you can't, I mean, you shouldn't be drafting to be contrarian and just for the really bad case scenario where like a player gets injured or they have a incredibly off year or something. Like, if you're just going off of stats and probability, there's no reason why you should not take Ohtani with the number one pick. Like, there's literally there's nothing you could possibly say to me that would convince me otherwise. So we have, a guy who just went, 50 plus, which is nuts in its own right. Hit 300 plus, like, just crazy stats, is in a stacked lineup if all things remain the same. And then on top of all that, he could potentially give you 120 innings next year of like a top 20 starter. It's crazy. That is really, I mean, that's a crazy amount of stats that you could potentially get from one guy. Now, I really think, like, I've said this before, but I really think that teams like fantasy leagues should allow you to get everything that Ohtani gives you. There shouldn't be like you have to choose. Like, you're drafting one player, you should be able to get his hitting and pitching stats. With that said, I mean, luckily for the other, people in your league, you're not going to be able to get the pitching and hitting stats completely because you're going to have to choose when he pitches whether or not you want to pitch him. So thankfully for the other people in your league, because a top 20 starter and a incredible hitter is really kind of unfair for the rest of the league. But it's not really going to be that won't be an issue for other people in your league. And also, going back to what I said before with Acuna, there's like everyone wants the first pick. And then if you don't get the first pick, you're immediately like, oh man, I'm in such a, I have to dig myself out of this hole. Like, oh shucks, like this guy's got Ohtani. He's gonna so easily win this league. And then you get to May, and SOL, something happens, and the entire league is not really contingent on who got the first pick. So I'm taking Ohtani number one, though, and I can't imagine a scenario where he wouldn't be taken number one in every league. Even like you mentioned, like this is for Roto and for shallower leagues, but even in a 15 team or deeper league, even in a head-to-head league, like there's no reason to not take Ohtani number one. I can't imagine, except unless you're just trying to do something different for whatever.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain point scoring setups out there that just, I mean, you have to, if you don't take a pitcher like the first 5 picks, it just feels stupid. But outside of that, yes, I agree. Ohtani, as of now, I mean, he has every chance to lead the league in home runs at any given year. I mean, this year showed if he wants to, he can probably lead the league in stolen bases or close to it. He can lead the league in average, runs, RBIs. Like, there's not a single category that he can't potentially lead the league in. That is absolutely absurd. And he's the best player in baseball. Why wouldn't he be the number one pick? We've had the player rater record broken in 3 straight seasons now, Gray. That's kind of ridiculous that we went Judge in 22, Acuna last year, and now Ohtani is going to break Acuna's player rater value. And
yeah, and honestly, with that
next number by like 16 is like the next to Judge. Like, that's crazy.
Right. Yeah, no, completely. And also in like, because like in relation to that, it's like, it's kind of crazy that we're having that happen with like Judge, Acuna, and then Ohtani, because like the rest of the league, it's not like we're living in a incredibly offensive rich league right now. Like this environment, this is not like 2019 where home runs are out of control, or or earlier in like the 2000s with like bonds and steroids, or batting averages were out of control, or like this is like a very like it's a kind of a mid league once you get out of like the top 50 or so hitters. Like it's not like it's a super offensive rich environment that these guys are doing this in. But yeah, it's crazy. It's really so random that we're having this happen back to back to back. Like, I think like it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it's crazy that we're having this type of production from the top end here. With that in mind, if we look at what's happened the last 3 years, history says it won't be Ohtani, and that somebody else will break the record of most valuable player available.
Which is why for the second pick, I'm taking Kevin Newman. No, sorry. I think it's probably your go now.
I mean, we can just let you go, Gray. If you just want to draft 1 through 25, I'll just sit here and walk people through it and make sure the names are right. That's okay. I don't have any problem with that.
No.
So says Chat B Don. But I'm taking Bobby Witt Jr. I mean, he's been my guy for like the last couple of seasons already. If there's a person who could potentially break the current record, I feel like it's, he's on that short list. He went 30-30 this year, which again, in any other normal year, that would be clear cut number one, or at least close to it. He had 332, which puts him in the batting average title, if not in that discussion every season. He's got over 100 RBIs. He's got 124 runs. I mean, he's just an amazing baseball player. He's in age-wise the prime of his career. Maybe the team around him could be a little bit better, but the Royals scored plenty this year to support Bobby Witt going in the 2 spot for me. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, no, I agree. He would have been my second pick as well. I think the wrapping up like grabbing 5 category guys as quick as possible is always a good move. So yeah, I have no problem with Bobby Witt Jr. there. So yeah,
okay. I gave you one also because I didn't want to make this next pick.
Yeah. So this next pick is like, so honestly, so I've said this before, I'll say it again, that like this top 25 for 25 isn't necessarily going to line up completely with my top 25 when I do my rankings in December, January. So I don't know, like I'm between a few guys here. Like I really wouldn't mind like probably 4 guys.
That's exactly the number I had in my mind. I had 4 guys and all 3 through 6 for me, and I'd be perfectly happy with any of them.
Right. Yeah. So I think, like when I do my my rankings in December, January, I probably do like, there's like I do tiers, right? When I do my rankings, and I think there's a clear 1-2 with Ohtani and Bobby Witt Jr. And then it is like another 4 guys. So, I think, like I just said, I really want 5 category guys. I think, and I think this guy is as close as you're going to find to a 5 category guy, where there is a potential for a little bit, a hair low on average, but still so good on the other categories, and young in his prime. I'm talking about Ellie De La Cruz. I'm going to go that way with my third pick. I think, this year he was 22 years old. So he hit 25 homers. If he gets, next year, if he gets just a small boost in power, and there's no reason why he shouldn't, because he is young, he's in a great park. So you're talking about potential 30 homers. He's still going to be young enough where he's going to steal a ton of bases. So if you're looking at 30, even conservatively, a 30-50 year, that is really good. So that alone is the reason why I'm taking him third overall. I think the runs and RBIs will be good enough because his offense, like the steals, he'll be in scoring position enough where he'll get enough runs. The RBIs should be good enough because he's going to hit plenty of homers, I would think. And the park is good. So it's a good offensive environment. So I like all that. I think the average, like he is, I want to say neutrally a 250 hitter. So that isn't fantastic as your third pick, but it's also like we've seen this before from so many players, and even Bobby Witt Jr., who you just drafted, we saw it from him big time. Like going into like 2 years ago, it looked like he could have potentially been a 240 hitter. And now it looks like he's going to lead the league in average. So it's like guys can get better in batting average. Elly De La Cruz becomes a better hitter for power, a little bit better even. Doesn't even have to be that much dramatically better. So he becomes a better hitter for power, gets a little more selective, and suddenly his K rate is down to like the 28% range, and he looks like a neutral 270 hitter. And with his speed, that could mean 280. Suddenly, Elly De La Cruz is a 5-category guy, including batting average. So I'm taking Elly De La Cruz here, mostly because of the 30 homer, 50 steal conservatively on his projections. But I think the batting average could even get a hair better next year. And with that will come better RBIs and runs, and everything could potentially get better. So we're looking at, I think, a baseline of 30-50, and you could potentially get like a Ronald Acuna last year type year where you get like 40-70. So yeah, I'm going Elly.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. He has crazy upside, and if anybody's going to, like we said with the Bobby Witt, like if somebody's going to break that player rater number, it's one of those guys, one of these guys that has all the tools. They're going to be a 5-category producer. Even when Judge did it, he stole more bases than we've ever seen Aaron Judge steal. Like it has to be part of the package if we're talking about reproducing these numbers and getting that 5-category producer, because it is important. It's really important to lock down all those categories. I mentioned one of the guys that I think that we probably have in, the next 2 or 3 picks, but I'm going to go with, a guy I think I was high on. I think I had him like 10 picks above ADP, maybe higher, depending on where you drafted. And for number 4, I'm going Gunnar Henderson. I mean, he was amazing this year. 37, 21, 280. 120 runs, 90 plus RBIs. I mean, there's nothing not to like about Gunnar Henderson. He's going to give you, I believe he's going to carry dual eligibility into next year with positions. So, no, actually, he's only going to be shortstop next year, which is kind of weird. We thought he'd be the third baseman, but that's still fine. I have no problem with him just becoming a one-position guy and being he's just really, really good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I can't argue with Gunnar Henderson. I like him a lot. He was he was definitely in those 4 that I was thinking about for that position. Okay. So with the 5th pick, okay. I'm going to go with a guy who I think is potentially going to be a New York Yankee next year, assuming he re-signs with them. I'm gonna go with Juan Soto. I know he's not gonna give you the incredible steals, but with that first round pick, I can't get my head around not taking a guy who is a baseline 35 homer, 7 to 10 steals, 285 hitter, going to give you in the Yankee lineup, assuming he does go back to the Yankees, which I really would be shocked if he doesn't go back to the Yankees, going to give you 115 baseline. This is 115 runs, 110 RBIs, depending on where he is in the lineup. That could become 105 runs and 125 RBIs. It's like everything is just like absolutely perfect for as far as 5x5 goes with Juan Soto. And also on top of all that, I think there's upside on all these numbers. I don't think we've even seen the peak yet of Juan Soto. And on the player rater right now, he's at, I believe, 6 overall. And he's only 25 years old. I really feel like Juan Soto may not be as flashy as a first round pick as like the Ellie De La Cruz is, or even I think Gunnar Henderson's a little bit flashier, and Aaron Judge would probably even be flashier. But I think just baseline safety wise, Juan Soto for me feels like, a guy who I absolutely would be looking at in this range. I don't see, again, it's like you're looking for a player with your first round pick. You want a player who it would have to be a total fluke for him to not reproduce, good production, So, and Juan Soto, I think is, if he is in Yankee Stadium again, there's no reason why we wouldn't see another great year from him.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. He wasn't one of the guys I was talking about. I didn't think you would take him at this position. I have him lower. I have him a good bit lower. I know you said you thought the baseline was like 35, 10, 285, but we've seen in recent history that's not the baseline. As recent as 2 years ago, it was 27, 6, 240. And as much as I do think he's probably back with the Yankees, I don't know that that's guaranteed. I mean, if he really wanted to be there, I think he would have signed one of the extensions. I mean, it feels like he's going wherever the most money comes from. I don't see it really being any different. It's kind of what he's said since he was in Washington. I don't see that changing at this point. And that's another reason I have him down, because New York is very much helpful for him as a line drive, lefty. He doesn't have to put launch. He doesn't have to, worry about the distance carry in certain areas of that park. Whereas if he goes to San Francisco, that's not necessarily the same thing. So the pending free agency certainly dropped him down in my rankings as well.
You think Arson Soto could go to San Francisco? I'll say this. I feel like it's not like Juan Soto could go to the Mets. I could see that potentially. Who else are some big market teams? Like I guess the Dodgers potentially. I mean, they already have $1 billion lineup. I don't know.
Boston probably
maybe Boston actually would be a good place.
But they take him away from New York, which is always a good Boston move.
Yeah, well, Fenway is a good park to hit in, but Boston hasn't spent money in years, so I don't see that happening. But it's just like I'm assuming he's going back to Yankees because it's like there's only so many people who could afford Juan Soto. It's not like the Marlins are going to be in on him, or I don't know. So many teams. There's like a good 20 teams that are off the board like immediately when you're looking at a Juan Soto. Maybe he goes back to San Diego. Anyway, I just feel like you mentioned 2022. He was there was an injury issue there. I really don't see like him being in his prime and being like as good as he is. I really don't see any downside on his stats at all. So yeah, anyway, but I respect that. We'll see what Beat-On AI has to say about all this.
Beat-On AI says you took the wrong Yankee. Take the one that's staying in the stadium and with the team, and the guy that's put up higher player rater numbers across the board for the last 3 years. Take Aaron Judge. I can't believe he wasn't taken ahead of Juan Soto. I thought for sure he was one of the top 6 or top 3 through 6 guys, 3 through 7 guys we were talking about. But yeah, I'm taking Aaron Judge. I mean, what else do you want him to do other than maybe steal some bases? He's pretty amazing. I mean, he's gonna lead the league in home runs. The average is great. He gets you as many runs and RBIs as you could possibly want from any player. And he's going to sit in the middle of that Yankee lineup, which if they don't sign Juan Soto, I still expect to go find somebody. Like if they somehow miss out on the Soto sweepstakes, they're going to go find somebody.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Aaron Judge was in my thoughts. He's my thoughts and prayers. He was in that sort of that grouping of next players that I was looking at. But he's 7 years older than Juan Soto. A big guy who has so many moving parts. He has to stay healthy. I mean, when we get to December, January, and I release my rankings, I absolutely might have Aaron Judge in front of Juan Soto, depending on how this offseason looks for Soto. So, I mean, I don't want to say like Aaron Judge is a bad pick there, because I absolutely would probably be taking him at 5 overall, potentially. I would take Aaron Judge in front of Gunnar Henderson, even though I like Gunnar Henderson a lot. So already this is, obviously not going to be my necessarily top 25 because I wouldn't have taken Gunnar there. I like Aaron Judge. I like that pick. I don't really have an issue with it. I just worry a little bit about his inability to stay on the field every year. He usually is. I mean, he's for a big guy. He has been remarkably healthy, but he has had a couple years here. Like if you're going to throw 2022 at Juan Soto, it's like 2 of the past 4 years for Aaron Judge have been less so than his other 2 years. I mean, he's had 2 great years and 2 solid-ish years.
I mean, his down year, his 39, 6, 287 in 2021 is what you want from Juan Soto. His down years are what you want from Juan Soto.
No.
Like,
no.
Isn't that just what you said? Like 35 home runs, 7 to 10 stolen bases, 285. Like that's literally a down year.
I mean those numbers, but not the runs and RBI. I mean, he missed time, and then he missed time last year in 2023. I like Aaron Judge. I could see potentially taking Aaron Judge in front of Juan Soto. Like I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying if you're going to throw Juan Soto's year from 3 seasons ago at him and you don't look at Aaron Judge's previous season, I mean, it's like okay. There's still, I mean, Aaron Judge he did have issues last year. I mean, it wasn't the best of years. It was good though. I mean,
37-3 in 106 games, then you got to replace him.
Whose year was better last year, Juan Soto or Aaron Judge?
I mean, I would say, given the fact that you get to replace Aaron Judge when he got injured versus having to deal with Juan Soto being terrible for 2 months.
We're not drafting Aaron Judge plus a waiver guy.
Why not? That's what happens. Is that not what happens?
It depends on what league you're in. Okay, let's move on. Okay. My pick, number 7. Number 7, I'm gonna go with a guy who I think is perennially underrated, and also I probably am underrating him by taking Juan Soto in front of him, and that's Jose Ramirez. So I mean, he's probably going to have like the most the quietest, most boring if a 40-40 year can be boring, I mean, he may not actually get to 40 homers. I don't know. As we record this, he's at 38, but he's going to have the quietest top 5 year with on the player rater because of Aaron Judge and Ohtani being so great that like no one's paying attention. Like most years, Jose Ramirez would have been the top player on the player rater if it wasn't for these insane Ohtani Judge years. So I think Jose Ramirez is, and he's doing that this year, but it's consistent over the past 4 years, easy. Basically, his entire career has been like a guy who is like looking at a 30-30 year for years on top of years at this point. So yeah, I'm gonna go Jose Ramirez. I think there's some question marks with the lineup, maybe. Maybe his average is more like 275 versus like 285 plus from some of the guys in front of him. And he's also maybe on the wrong side of 30 for the speed. But even if his speed comes down a little bit and he ends up with like a 30, 25, 275 year, it's still, again, you're underrating Jose Ramirez, I think. And he's been underrated for basically his whole career.
Yeah, he was the guy I was talking about. I didn't have Juan Soto in that group. I had Jose Ramirez in the grouping. So yeah, I have absolutely no problem. That's where I have him going as well. Other than you can remove the Soto pick, so I think that's where he belongs, given just the numbers he continues to produce and the upside he showed that he still has with the stolen bases this year. I mean, he's just a smart player, so I feel like even losing speed, as you mentioned, he's still going to steal bases. We've seen in recent seasons that you don't need to have top end speed to steal a lot of bases. You just need to have, a manager that lets you, and then be have that skill, be able to steal bases. Number 8 for me. This is, I don't know if he really, it was somebody that popped in my head last second because I started with like the player rater and I went, last 30 and started just sorting by what people had done this year. And then I thought back and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this guy being Kyle Tucker, who is basically 30-30, 285 locked in as long as he plays a full season. It was a lower leg injury. It wasn't something that's, career ending or it's going to sap power or speed from him moving forward. So I'm just sticking Kyle Tucker back in like nothing happened, and I'll just enjoy him if he falls to me at this point.
Yeah, so we're in so obviously I think we're out of, for me at least, I'm not going to speak for you because you had so many issues with Juan Soto, probably one of the best players we're ever going to see in our life. But so I won't speak for you, but I feel like we're out of that little grouping of like guys. Yeah. Okay. So here, I think this is like this area of the top, 25 for us, but even the top 12 or whatever. I think at this point we're in an area where it's like, okay, these guys have done it. They didn't necessarily do it this year, potentially, or they could be, possibly just a guy who could do it at some point, even though they haven't really done it. So there's question marks here. I think, you can go off of guys like on the player rater who are already, for this year, there's a few guys who made it into like the top 15 who don't have the track record. And then there's other guys who are like, who have the track record who just didn't do it this year. And that's that latter group is where I'm at with, these players. I feel like I still want the somewhat safety of having a guy who has done, well in the past and had a little bit of a struggle this year. So I guess what I'm getting at is I'm going to say Julio Rodriguez, even though he did not have a great year And that's not, I mean, I'm not doing a spoiler here. We all realize that Julio Rodriguez had a struggle this year to own, to roster for like the first half of the year at least. And he wasn't really great until September. But he's still, even with that incredibly bad year, had an IL stint that, took some games away from him. And he still went 2020 and 270. That's like not what you wanted from him, but it's also not the worst thing in the world. Like that's doable. That's repeatable. I think, I was between him and another guy who is like, I want to say a top 5 pick overall that also struggled this year. And I was looking at him as well, but I'm going to go Julio Rodriguez because I feel like the talent is still completely there. If you look at the peripherals, like it's hard to really look at his peripherals and see immediately like a major flaw that has emerged in his game. Like his line drives were up this year. His hard hit was down a little bit, but not really down that far. His soft contact was basically the same. His launch angle didn't get really messed. Like he didn't have a problem with his launch angle. He didn't have a problem with like ground balls. His Ks didn't skyrocket. His walks were probably about the same. He still stole a bunch of bases. Everything looks fine. This looks like just an off year for Julio Rodriguez. And I think in retrospect, we're going to look back and be like, wow, a 24-year-old bounced back to a 30-30 year. Who would have saw that coming? Like, I feel like Julio Rodriguez is still that guy. So I'm going Julio.
Yeah, I mean, so much talent there. I mean, he's on my list. I didn't have him quite this high, but I completely understand the pick. I mean, as much upside as pretty much anybody left on the board, so it's a pick that makes sense here. I'm gonna go with a guy that I traditionally don't have really listed, and I tend to fade him, which means this is probably the time that he's going to just disappoint, and I'll actually own him next year. That is Francisco Lindor, who, again, 30, like 270, 260, and he's done it back-to-back seasons. I mean, he's always had the talent to put up those kind of numbers. So I'm just going to take Francisco Lindor. I'll take his 30-30 and just be happy with that without having to necessarily take on the risk that I see maybe with a Julio Rodriguez, just in, there was periods of time this year, large periods of time this year where you didn't want to start him. And that's really hard. I understand the numbers are there end of the year, but it's tough.
Yeah, no, totally. I think Lindor, actually, it's kind of funny that he used to play with Jose Ramirez because I feel like they're similar in that they're both kind of underrated. I can't really argue with Lindor. I think, for whatever reason, the Mets never really give him the counting stats that, potentially, not that Julio Rodriguez and the Mariners are necessarily there with counting stats either. But yeah, I think Lindor's year this year is basically, what you probably would have, what you're probably looking at is hoping from Julio Rodriguez. So it's like, I can't argue with it. It's basically, Lindor is doing what I'm hoping I get from Julio Rodriguez next year. So, it's like, that's a pretty good guy to draft. Okay. So I mentioned, I sort of alluded to a guy again who had a struggle this year, but who I'm absolutely still in on. I can't see, again, it's like if you look at his numbers, you're seeing a guy who, outside of like, this mysterious shoulder potentially, I think I'm going with Corbin Carroll. So what I see with him is like a guy who is 25 homers, easy 30 steals, should hit 250 or higher. This year, his BABIP was crazy low. And I don't really see like his hard contact is fine. His fly balls are fine. His line drives are a little bit down, but not terrible. I think Corbin Carroll is probably getting a bit unlucky on average with his 230-ish average right now. So I say he's a 255, 265 hitter with 25 homers, 35 steals. It's that right there, just like, okay, that's it. If you just say that, and then you throw in like, the 110 runs, 70 to 80 RBIs, it's hard to not see Corbin Carroll being again like, a guy where I feel like if I'm in the top 12 and I'm taking Corbin Carroll, I don't feel like we're not in the same tier as the Gunnar Hendersons of the world. Like, we are not in the same tier as the Ellie De La Cruzes or the Aaron Judges or Jose Ramirez's. Like, this is a group of guys that have had some issues this year, but if you're just looking at a guy who's going to be 24 years old and is still on the upswing of his career, and, besides that bit of fear when it comes to a shoulder issue, I don't see the really huge downside in taking Corbin Carroll if he's like able to continue this second half into next year, which hopefully he's able to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was lingering issues in the first half. I mean, it looks, just looking at the numbers, I mean, it seems like everything corrected itself second half. Just he got back on track, maybe got healthy. He hit 263, 17 home runs, 15 stolen bases in the second half. I mean, that's the Corbin Carroll you drafted, that you expected. If he had showed up like that, some of my teams might not have been so far behind and maybe would have been able to make some comebacks. But it is what it is. Corbin Carroll is a good pick there. He was definitely on my board as one of the next picks. I'm going to go. I went boring. I went with Francisco Lindor. I have to mix it up a little bit now and kind of shoot for some upside here. I'm going to go with Jackson Chourio, who we talked about for like 45 minutes on a show a couple weeks ago. But I love what we're seeing from him. This was his first look in the majors, and we're seeing the like peak years are happening earlier and earlier. So, if you can't keep fighting the old, I have to see him do it stereotype, because once they've done it, then they're going to be, top 3, top 5 picks, or, you're just not going to be able to, you're just not going to get the value out of it. I understand maybe I'm building in some of that value into this draft price, but 21-21, 275 in his first look, that's a pretty strong line from a guy who is 20 years old at the major league level. Obviously we've seen certain guys like this struggle in their second season, but I mean, it's not like he struggled as the season went on. He really struggled right out of the gate and then got it together and has been really good. Second half, 309 with 12 home runs, 11 stolen bases in the second half. He's been great, and I think there's more to come.
Yeah, no, totally. I like that pick. So I'm going to take a next guy who I think by March of next year, I don't think this guy is going to necessarily be on the board here. I think he's either going to be, okay, so who I'm going to take is Ronald Acuna Jr. So what I'm going to say here is I don't think he's going to be on the board at this point. I think he's either, if we get to March and he looks great in the spring, he's going to be, I would guess he's going to go before like the, Kyle Tuckers or Gunnar Hendersons of the world. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets shoved up to like the top 7 overall, or if we get to March and there's some sort of setback, or it just doesn't look like it's, for whatever reason, or if like the Braves come out and say, oh, he's not going to be stealing this year, or if, for whatever, like if something looks off with him, then I wouldn't be surprised if he actually drops even lower. So I doubt he's at this point in the draft. I think he's either going to be way higher or way lower. So I'm taking Ronald Acuna Jr. because, I think he should be healthy. I guess we don't know. We won't know for a while. I'm assuming he'll be healthy. If he's healthy, then he's like, an easy 30 homer, probably 30 steal 275 hitter. I don't see any real, like, I other than, the injury, I don't really know. Like, it's hard to know exactly what you're going to get from Ronald Acuna Jr. as we record this in September. My guess is 30, 30, 275. That could be, we could actually be looking at closer to like 40, 50, 40, 60, or potentially 35, 10. If the knee is an issue and he decides he's not going to be running anymore. I don't know. He has come back from knee issues before and continued to run. So I'm assuming he's going to be okay, but this is a super risky pick. But I think the upside is just so immense that, yeah, I'm going to go Ronald Acuna Jr.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. We're getting to the point in the draft where, I mean, there's still a lot of upside. Don't get me wrong, but like we're starting to run out of that number one player archetype. I know we talked about kind of when we got to Kyle Tucker, we're like, okay, we've kind of hit that next grouping of guys, but they were kind of really running out of them. There's a few guys still left on the board that have the talent to do it, but I don't know if I believe that they're going to kind of snap it all together and it's going to happen. I'm going to go with a kind of boring pick, another guy who, it doesn't typically end up on my teams, but I feel like at 14, he needs to come off the board. A little bit of a down year for him, but he missed some time. There was I think he played a little injured at times as well. And he seems very safe where he's at. He's going to have multi-position eligibility. Depending on where you play, he'll have 3 positions, but I think most places he's only going to have 2, and that is Mookie Betts. He's going to go probably 2016 this year, 1916 right now at 290. Those numbers are not great, but that was in 114 games. He's just so safe. He's such a great athlete. He's so good at every part of the game, and he's going to stay in that Dodgers lineup. So just feels like a very, very safe pick.
Yeah, no, totally. He was on my board for actually a couple picks. Like I keep saying, this doesn't necessarily represent what my top 20 will be next year. So I could see putting Betts up higher potentially, or even lower. He's a tough one because it's like, I love the safety of Mookie Betts and what he brings. Similar to like, Juan Soto. Like I feel like Mookie Betts is super safe, but he is much older. And, at some point you have to assume that like maybe 140 games is as much as you're going to get from Mookie Betts, even though, obviously it was a fluky injury this year. He got hit by a pitch, so that's not something you can really account for. So hopefully he stays healthy next year and he gives you 155 games and 120 runs and 100 RBIs or 85 RBIs and, great average and 25 to 30 homers and 25 to 30 steals, or I guess 15 steals. But still, yeah, I like Mookie Betts a lot. I don't mind the pick. I just feel like it's, just as he gets older, it's a safe pick, and there doesn't feel like it feels more like there's more downside than upside. But that's, it's still a solid pick. I'm going to go. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in theory, at 14, you would be wrapping around soon in a 15-team league. So there's a little bit of like me playing out in my mind, like in a 15-team league, take Mookie Betts, and then there's still plenty of guys with like the upside factor coming around, but maybe not the safety factor so much.
Right. Yeah. So I'm actually going to take a guy who you'll probably say, yeah, that's basically Juan Soto, just 10 picks later. And you wouldn't be wrong if you said that, because I mean, he has done basically Juan Soto this year, just, minus some of the crazy counting stats because he wasn't in front of Judge all year. And that's Yordan Alvarez. Again, it's like 35 plus homers, 5 steals, 295 average, solid runs and RBIs. Like you can't really account for runs and RBIs. Like Yordan Alvarez right now looks like he's going to barely break 90 RBIs this year. if he were to have 120 RBIs next year, it wouldn't shock me. Like that's just a matter of whether or not the Astros are in front on the bases in front of him. It has no real bearing on anything. So, and the runs are a similar situation. So really, the runs and RBIs are the only thing stopping Yordan Alvarez from being exactly what Juan Soto probably will be. Maybe minus. Like Juan Soto, I think, has like 12 steal speed, even if he isn't necessarily going to steal those 12 bags. Where Yordan Alvarez is probably more like a 3 to 5 steal guy, but it's still like you can make up, 5 to 7 steals elsewhere. It's not really like you have to get it from your first round pick. So yeah, I'm going to go Yordan Alvarez. It's a safe pick. I don't mind it. I think it's probably he will be in like my top 20 somewhere around this range because I like Yordan Alvarez. I think there is also I still feel like there could be the potential of that crazy like 50 plus homer year from him because he is that kind of hitter.
Yeah, I mean, he's still an amazing hitter. Nothing's changed on that front. He's actually stayed healthy, so that's good as well. So everything's been moving positive for Yordan. No issue with that pick. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much the same numbers as what we were looking at earlier. That's fine. I will say last year when we did this, I feel like, we knew who I was going to disagree on with you last year, and it played out that way. This year feels a lot more spread out in regards to, especially this area that I think we're about to get to, where names could kind of go all over the place from here to like 30, even a little bit past that. And it really won't surprise me in any kind of order. So with that said, I'm going to shoot for some upside here. I'm going with the other Jackson. I'm going with Jackson Merrill. I mean, he's got power, he's got speed, maybe not quite as much speed as what we've talked about with some of the other guys, but I think the power can even increase from this year. I think he's going to be like a 30-20 guy. He's already shown he can hit for high average. Look, Ks are already, well under control for a rookie at 21, which is absolutely ridiculous. The counting numbers weren't there this year. The Padres were a little disappointing in regards to the counting numbers as a whole, and he kind of had to work his way up into the top of the lineup a little bit as well. But that'll fix itself next year when he'll be at the top of the lineup to start the season. Give me the upside of a 30-20 to 80 guy. I'll go with Jackson Merrill.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I'm gonna. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say for sure I'm not gonna have him in my top 20 because I might surprise myself when I look at him next year and or not next year, probably in 6 weeks. But I might surprise myself and see how much upside there still is there. I don't know. I like him a lot though, so I'm kind of surprised you took him above a few guys. Okay, so I'm going with upside too. A guy who I think is easily better than Jackson Merrill. What he was this year, I don't see why he wouldn't be next year too. I'm going to say Jarren Duran, 20 homer guy, 30 plus steal guy, solid average. I mean, he had a 21% strikeout rate, 7+% walk rate. Looks like a neutral 280 hitter. Looks like ease, and Fenway's a great park, as I mentioned earlier in the pod. But everyone knows that anyway. But yeah, I mean, great park, solid average, really good speed, exceptional speed. Where I think he only had he had 30 plus steals this year. I wouldn't be shocked if that is 40 plus next year. He could go. He's a guy who sneaky could go 25, 45 next year. That's, I think, the kind of potential he has. But even if he were to just repeat this year, as we see on the player rater right now, he is a top 15 guy overall on the player rater. So, like he just needs to repeat, and he gets that again. So yeah, I feel like Duran was actually on my board for a few picks. I was looking at I was between Duran and Acuna, and then I went Jordan because I figured I would let you have Duran, but then you took Jackson Merrill, which is just okay.
I mean, essentially the same numbers. You just flip home runs and stolen bases. So, do you want 30 home runs and 20 stolen bases, or do you want 20 home runs and 30 stolen bases? I mean, Durant could steal more. It's definitely a possibility, but I think that it almost requires him to be on a different team. I don't think Boston is. I mean, they still
they run a lot, don't they?
They run a lot, but like
run a lot.
That's part of it. Like, where else is he going to steal more than what he stole this year?
Yeah.
I mean, they feel aggressive, but like they're aggressive up and down their lineup. It's not letting somebody steal 70 like Ellie gets to do. Their lineups, their lineup is good enough that they'll let Devers hit him in, they'll let people hit him in if he's out there. And if they do magically add Juan Soto, the counting numbers probably go up, but those stolen bases may drop. I think it's probably also a development timeline thing for me. For Merrill, he hit the ground running as a rookie, whereas Duran, this is his 4th season. I know 2 of those were partial seasons, so it's hard to hold that against him, but it's just a little bit less of a clean development line for Duran. That being said, he was very consistent all year, so I don't have any problem with that pick. He's on my board for that pick too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'll say in opposition to my Duran pick, I will say that the Red Sox I have heard rumors that potential trade of Duran, because they do have a bunch of prospects about to come up. So if Duran were to be traded, that would change things potentially, depending on where he goes, obviously. But for the information I have right now, I'm taking Duran there. And honestly, I might have taken Duran before Cheerio. I like Duran a lot. If he's back with Boston in leadoff, I'm a big Duran fan. So yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I mean, they're both great. I think Cheerio's upside's just a touch higher. I mean, they're both really fast. I just think Cheerio's upside in regards to home runs and is higher. I'm going to go with another person who I'm going to say puts up a very similar line and is your boy Juan Soto, and that is a fellow former young superstar who developed, and that's Bryce Harper. I mean, it's basically Juan Soto plus a few years. They've same career path essentially. I wouldn't be surprised if Juan Soto eventually moves to first base as well. So that's where I'm going. 30 home runs, 7 to 10 stolen bases, 285. The counting numbers, for whatever reason, aren't there this year. I don't necessarily understand that, but I don't think that's necessarily something that sticks year to year with Harper.
Yeah, no, fair. I actually, you were saying that like a former top prospect who gives you the same as Juan Soto, and I thought you were going to go with a guy who I'm going to take here, which is Vlad Jr. I think he's also in that Juan Soto mold of 35 homer potential, 5 to 7 steal potential, good average potential, similar to Bryce Harper as well. I think Bryce Harper, Vlad Jr., Juan Soto are all kind of similar, and Yordan Alvarez. I'll say, for defending Juan Soto, still, this is the this podcast, if it wasn't called the top 25 and 25, it would be called defending Juan Soto. I think Juan Soto is still only he's younger, and he has way more upside than all these guys. I think that is I'll have to say that. But I do agree that they're not necessarily dramatically different. If Vlad Jr. were like Vlad Jr. has had a 48 homer season that was in minor league park, so I don't think we're getting that again. But he still is young. I think if Vlad Jr. were to at 26 years old, if Vlad Jr. next year were to hit 40 plus homers, it wouldn't shock me. And he's still he is neutrally a 295 hitter. Like he is probably even neutrally, he might be closer to a 305 hitter. I mean, he is a really good hitter, Vlad Jr. There's not going to be many steals there. Steals are down. Even for him, who isn't really much of a stolen base threat, I mean, they were even down a little bit this year. So I think as he gets older, the steals might evaporate completely. He might become closer to a Austin Riley where, he could steal, but he just doesn't. Vlad Jr., I think is, next year, I'd say 100 runs, 32 homers, 105 RBIs, 305 average. That's probably what you're looking at for projections, and that's solid. And like I said, there could be some upside here, but yeah, I don't think there's not upside on all his categories. Just, I think power potentially. So yeah, I like Vlad Jr. there. I don't necessarily, I feel like what you were saying about, Lindor at the turn or whatever, or Betts, actually, you said that about Betts. Betts at the turn, you've already got one guy and now you're taking Betts. I feel like that kind of with Vlad Jr., even though we're not drafting for a team necessarily. At this point, you would have to assume you have someone like, say, Jose Ramirez, and then you're going to turn around and take Vlad Jr. That's a solid, rock solid base. So, you're taking Vlad Jr. thinking you're getting a solid base for, your first base spot. You're not necessarily, it's not like you're building around Vlad Jr. Vlad Jr. is the building, is the foundation that you're building off of. I think that didn't make any sense, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, yeah, Vlad Jr.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great hitter. We know what he's capable of. My only problem with him is the inconsistency from year to year. We've seen him go from 26 to 48, which I don't think, at this point, I don't think either of us necessarily see him getting the 48 again, home runs. So somewhere in that 30 home run range. He's hit 265 to 326 this year. That's my only problem with Vlad is he's so much average dependent. His value changes so dramatically if he's a 326 versus a 270 hitter, because I don't know. I know you said there's more upside for home runs, and specifically next year, if he gets traded, there's definitely potential for more home runs. But barring a change in park, I don't know there's a whole lot more than 35 home run power there. I don't have a problem with them going there. As I said, anywhere from 15 to 30, I think there's a lot of wiggle room, but it wasn't where my board went. That being said, where my board goes next may be very controversial as well. So with no further ado, I'm going to throw maybe the strangest dart I have all draft so far. It's a guy we've talked about. I love him. He had another guy I kind of, maybe Juan Soto-esque numbers, Gray. Brent Rooker. Obviously some concern that he's a very late blooming prospect. The average jumped 50 points this year, high BABIP. I get it. I understand why it isn't Juan Soto and isn't going where Juan Soto goes. But you start getting through the numbers and you look at what Rooker did, and unless you think he's just falling off the map and he's going to be a 240, 25 home run hitter again, it's hard to ignore him for a whole lot longer in my mind. You get him down to 25, 30, but that's about as far as I think you can push him. And so I'm just going to make a call here that I do believe the breakout's real, and I'll take him at 20.
Yeah, no, I think the breakout is real too. I've been doing some recapping of positions, writing them up, and I was looking at Brent Rooker the other day, and I basically said it'll be released in the coming days on the site, but I basically found that everything looks real, and it was actually shocking to me of how much he had kind of done this already the previous year. Like there wasn't like I kind of felt like for most of the year, like Brent Rooker was breaking out, but he sort of did this in 2023. It was like he definitely built on what he had done previously, but it isn't completely out of nowhere. Like he was really solid. So he was actually a guy that should have been more targeted, I think, in coming into this year, into 2024, coming off of his 2023 year. Like he wasn't really bad coming in. Like it wasn't like, oh no. The biggest issue I think with Brent Rooker coming into this year was like how terrible are the counting stats going to be, like the runs and RBIs, because he did hit 30 homers and stole 4 bags in 137 games in 2023. Like there was an inkling there. Like the K rate was a little bit high, but as you know, we've said before, it's like just give guy reps, and eventually, like the Ks can come down if a guy gets reps, like or they can't. But some guys do get better. It just depends on the player, and he definitely got better this year, but not as dramatically better. So I guess what I'm saying is like I not only do I think it's real, I think there was inklings previously there.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's why I had him ranked well above his ADP, and I got him pretty much across the board in drafts. I didn't necessarily think this was coming. I thought maybe you'd get like a Jorge Soler or maybe like a Kyle Schwarber type of season,
Or
but
like a
I
Max
mean,
Muncy. Yeah,
yeah,
totally. Yeah.
but you got even better than that. I mean, you got a guy that
Mhm.
actually can hit for high average. I don't know if I necessarily see him as a 296 guy, but 38-10 with 275, even 265 would be just fine at this point in the draft. You just add that power, you add, again, not premium counting stats, but still they should be pretty good. He's going to get over 100 RBIs
Also, he's gonna be in a
pretty
minor league
easy.
park. He's gonna be in a minor league park next year too.
Yeah, next year might hit 60. Who knows what's going on in that one?
I do think Sacramento's park dimensions aren't dramatically better, but anyway, I do like Brent Rucker. Okay, so I feel like I'm taking all the boring guys, but
I feel like it's been a lot of boring gray.
yeah,
There's a lot of like
um,
risk at the top somewhere.
yeah, I'm gonna take another boring guy that I think has basically done this year. He's had a solid year. I think he's been sort of forgotten, and maybe this is a little bit high for him, but I'm going to take Trey Turner. He had 2020 year this year, hit almost 300. He's 31 years old, so at a certain point, I guess the steals will disappear. But this year, like he had a fluky injury. He was out for 6 weeks this year with I think it was a hamstring. So I mean, as a player gets older, maybe that's a sign of things to come. So maybe there is something more there than just fluky. But if he's on the field for 150 games this year, his stats would have looked the exact same as you get every other year. Like he's basically in 120 games this year, he's putting up like a prorated season of what you were hoping to get. So yeah, I think again, I think he can do it for one more year. I think he can be a top 25 player for one more year in 2025. And yeah, I'm going to go Trey Turner there.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. He was in this grouping of players for me. I mean, he could go 25-25. He just stays healthy, and that's a very nice line at this point. I'm going to go with a minor leaguer at this next pick, Gray. I'm gonna go with C.J. Abrams. You know, he's in the Nationals minor league system, but I have high hopes for this kid. I think he's really going to be something, Gray. So
I hope he breaks camp with the Nationals.
If he doesn't, he better get traded. They better trade him if he doesn't. I will.
I hope he either breaks camp or he becomes like the new Brent Musburger at MGM. I accept nothing else from CJ.
Oh yes, 2031 this year and only 138 games. 246 is low on the average. The average may not climb, extensively, but I mean he's as fast as be. He's got good power, and he's going to sit at the top of the Nationals lineup or somebody's lineup.
Yeah, I have no problem with CJ Abrams there. At this point, so there is a lot of question marks here.
We're starting to run into them. I have a couple of like safety guys left, but everything else is
it's like
question mark,
basically
really.
It's like the entire Braves lineup is anyone who is in the Braves lineup this year is a potential question mark for the top 25
this year, within the last 3 years or so, give or take.
Yeah. If you or anyone has been in the Braves lineup in the past like 3 years, you are a potential top 25 pick. So I'm gonna go with the first pitcher off the board. I'm gonna go with Tariq Skubal. I think he, I don't, as we've said many times before, I don't draft a pitcher high. I don't think Tariq Skubal is going to still be on the board at this point. I think he's probably going to be drafted. If conservatively, I think he's going to be drafted in the top 15. I would guess there's going to be people in the top 10 taking him because every year people push up pitchers for whatever reason. So I think this is kind of like, it's a bit of a moot point with Tariq Skubal saying I'm going to take him here because he's going to be way off the board at this point. He's probably off the board at least 10 picks before this. I wouldn't draft him in the top 12, but I think he's probably going to go somewhere in there, maybe the top 15. I think he's easily the top pitcher off the board. It's probably between him, Skeens, and Wheeler. I think Skubal's the guy I would take if I were to take a top pitcher. I think Skubal is the guy you take here. I think he's like, assuming the Tigers don't go deep into the playoffs and his innings don't get completely insane this year, even though they are kind of already on the verge of insane. But he's like great strikeouts. So near 11K per nine, solid like insanely solid walks. So if he falls down to like a 10K per nine, barely a 10K per nine, even though he's way above that. If he falls down next year to a barely 10K per nine and a 2 walk rate, that's still ace numbers, assuming he can stay healthy, which, I wouldn't assume with any pitcher, but someone's got to take a pitcher. So, I'm going to take a pitcher.
I really should follow that up with another pitcher just to make a point that they, they would go, but I'm not going to, Gray. I'm going to continue to poke at you and poke at Juan Soto. And I'm going to take another guy who gives you 30, 11, 275. And that is Manny Machado. That's what he does. He did it again. And, outside of the counting numbers and the OBP, which is why Soto gets the counting numbers to some extent, to a lot of extent, pretty much the same numbers as what you're getting from Soto. I'm pretty happy with Manny Machado at this point. He's one of the safe guys left. I definitely thought about throwing some of the more risky names up into this group, but this feels like the area where you start getting into like, you know what? I will take a safe guy over the amount of risk that's due for the next few names.
Yeah, no, and I think, even though I wouldn't draft a pitcher in the top 25, I do think because my rankings usually have a pitcher or two in the top 25, guys who are way after their ADP, and I say not to draft them. So I do think there is a potential here for my top 25 to actually look similar in this respect. That I'll take Tariq Skubal at 22, and then at 24, I think I'm going to take Paul Skeens because I think he's also going to be off the board. I think he's going to get pushed up so high in the preseason. I wouldn't be surprised if he's even above Skubal in some drafts. I wouldn't be shocked to see Skeens in the top 15 of most drafts. I think he's, again, I really like Paul Skeens. I have no problem with him. I think he might actually even be safer than Skubal as far as innings goes, because like he didn't jump quite as crazy high as Skubal. And he's also, he's only 22 years old. He's 11.5 K per nine, a barely 2 walk rate, probably neutrally a 2.5 ERA. I mean, just insane numbers from Paul Skeens as a rookie. And he's also going to be, next year, he's going to, I don't know how much better he could be, but imagine he gets better. So yeah, I'm not drafting him personally. In my top 25, I think he'll be drafted already. But for this exercise, I'm going to take Paul Skeens at 24.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be available either. I think he's going to get crazy pushed up the board. He may even go above Skubal. And, I'm not going to draft him, so I'll mention his name, Zach Wheeler, who is the other top starting pitcher and the one who maybe has the track record if you're a track record type of person. So yeah, I agree. He's going to be off the board at this point. He's great. I mean, the numbers looked amazing. I think the amount that they used him this year kind of shows that they're not necessarily afraid to let him throw. I don't know that he's going to jump to 200 innings next year, but he's not going to give you, 140 where you're really going to have to fill in around him and find those extra innings, assuming health. So yeah, I have no problem with that. Livy Dunn's boyfriend can go here, and that's perfectly okay. I'm going to go with one last safety pick grade just because this has been a safety pick kind of draft. Another 30 home run, handful of stolen bases, maybe less stolen bases. So that's why he drops below the other names we've talked about so far, but just as consistent as they come. And that is Rafael Devers. I don't know. There's a whole lot more here to say. I mean, we know who Devers is. There's maybe some power upside here, maybe some average upside, but I mean, 30 home runs, 275, 280 is about what you're going to get season to season.
Okay, so that's the top 25. I had a question for you. Did you have any? Were you at all considering Austin Riley or Pete Alonso in any of those picks, or no?
So I have the next 4 guys on my list are all a little bit risky power speed combo guys, and then I get into those guys. So I have, after those 4, I have Freddie, Alonso, Olsen, and Riley, kind of all back to back to back. And then I get into like the really risky group of upside guys like James Wood, Lawrence Butler, Brenton Doyle types. I don't know that Doyle's going to stay that high for me, but looking at the numbers this year, I just thought he needed to be included. I made basically like a top 40 list just to see where it went. But I had like your boy O'Neill.
Matt Olson. There's Matt Olson too. He's yeah. I mean, there's going to be, honestly, as we go through this, to me, like just, thinking off the top of my head, I feel like there's going to be some really good value after the top 25. Like there's a ton of guys who went this year in the top 25 that we didn't mention, like the Olsons, like the Rileys, like the Alonsos, that are going to be, pushed after top 25 overall. And it's going to be hard to like if you say you take, say Ellie and then you take, I don't know, say Duran. You take Ellie De La Cruz, Duran. Then you're in the third, and then you're in the third round. And if you're looking at Matt Olson, that doesn't sound bad, right? Like Matt Olson had a down year this year, so obviously he's going to be pushed down a little bit in drafts next year. But if you're looking at like having, a guy like Olson or Riley or Freddie Freeman, as you mentioned, like you're looking at those guys in the 30s, and then you follow that around with like your first pitcher, and then you go back. Oh man, I'm liking my draft already. I'm like 5 months from drafting, and I already like my draft.
I almost like if you could trade your second for like a third and a fifth, I almost feel like that's the move, Greg, because the second feels a little iffy if I'm not being honest. But like the third, fifth is filled with like guys you're like, oh my god, at this value, how is he still around? Like we didn't mention Tatis. He's definitely up in the next round or two of guys. We mentioned all like the power guys who didn't necessarily show up this year. Like as you mentioned, all the Braves. So Michael Harris, Ozzie Albies, where do they go back in? If Luis Robert can escape from hell, aka the south side of Chicago, where does he go? Bo Bichette, does he get drafted at all in a 15-team draft hold? I don't know. Royce Lewis's, injury-plagued carcass. Does he ever get drafted? Like, there's a lot of guys with upside still to go here. Just not necessarily like it starts to get into one of those things where it's no longer 5 category at some point. It's like 3.5 category type of guys. Yeah. And so it just kind of depends how you build your roster from that point.
Right. Yeah. Like Manny Machado or
Nico Horner's like speed, average, and runs, but like that's it. Like zip arrow everywhere else. Like those type of guys are starting to come up at that point. But yeah, I mean there's going to be some names in that like 3rd through 5th through 6th round, and they're going to be the guys who win leagues. Like this year's Gunnar Henderson's and Schwarber actually was really strong. Teoscar, who went in that round, was really good, and we didn't even get to him. He was in that next group for me.
Like I felt like this year, coming into this year, I remember distinctly feeling like I would have loved to have drafted Austin Riley in every league in the 2nd round.
Yeah,
that played out so poorly, but
it couldn't have been worse.
Yeah, it couldn't have been worse, right? But if you get Austin Riley in the 3rd round or 4th round or wherever he goes, if you're getting Austin Riley there and you're like, and you just barely get like a bounce back, like even if you get like 30, 100, 270, it's like that is basically Juan Soto.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of good value. I think
Zach Neto. I mean, I know it doesn't feel like he belongs. I feel like nobody's talked about him, but in a lot of other seasons, somebody goes like 25-30. I know he's not quite at 25, but like 23-30, it'd be a lot bigger storyline than it has been this year.
Yeah, Brent. I feel like Brenton Doyle, Zach Nato,
Ezekiel Tovar.
Oh, Ezekiel Tovar. Yeah, like there's certain guys that are like definitely whatchamacallit, Zach Nato for sure is a guy that's like on a team where if he can stay healthy, he's going to get 600 at bats, and he's going to just basically run as much as he wants. And if he gets 20 homers and 40 steals and 600 at bats, it wouldn't shock me. Like he can basically do whatever he wants with the Angels, because like what's stopping him?
Yeah, I mean, who are they waiting on to knock him in? Like,
right?
Who's going to bring him in if he doesn't do it himself?
Right, exactly.
By the way, did you see Ohtani mention that like he's been able to like relax and actually just play baseball this year because he didn't think he had to hit every single run home for his team because that's what happened in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I didn't see that, but it doesn't shock me. I mean, Ohtani, my God, Ohtani next year. Like, what if he, like, I can't imagine he does anything close to this year. But again, it's like I can't also count out Ohtani for doing anything. Like he's capable. It seems like he's capable of anything at this point. And if
whatever he wants to do.
and that means like going 40-40, 150 innings, 200 strikeouts. It's like, oh my God, man. Like, come on, bro. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean he's a generational talent, maybe not even generational, like all time talent. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. I know people want to bring up Babe Ruth in this conversation, but let's not get crazy. In regards to the pitching that Ohtani is capable of, it's absolutely absurd what he's doing on the hitting side, plus what he's capable of pitching. I know there's been talk that maybe we get to see him throw in the playoffs if they go deep enough, or if they feel like they want him, need him for an inning here or there. I don't know that that's a great idea, but I'm not against seeing it because anything he does is electric.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Gray, that is 25. We talked about, all the way down to what I think I had down to 40. As we mentioned, this will adjust. It's not Gray's rankings. It's not my rankings. So you're getting a little bit of mix, and there's definitely going to be some fine tuning as we go forward. But this at least gives us a starting point as we look forward to next year in September of the previous season. So hope everybody enjoyed it. If you have specific questions for Keeper, for Dynasty, or if you're doing some early drafts, you can find us on Twitter. I'm at RazBeaton. Gray is at Razzball. Like, subscribe, rate, review wherever you watch us or listen to us, youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy. Gray, it's been a great season. Good luck. Hopefully you can take home that labor title, and I'll talk to you later, bud.
Late.